Hi everyone! So we're back to reading Hungry Like the Wolf. We're on chapter 12. I'm going to do this as a shorter video because the last one just turned out to be really, really long because I just desperately needed to finish the chapter. So we'll probably break this up into two chunks. God, this book is going to take forever to finish, but we're almost there. We're on page 193 and there's 229 pages in this book, so I think we could do this, alright? Okay, so chapter 12. The judge signed the warrants against Hardy, Gage told Mackenzie when he walked back into his office. She didn't exactly look thrilled to hear his news, but then again, he hadn't expected her to be. They had spent a good part of the early morning hours talking about what going after Hardy would entail, and Mackenzie had been pretty clear about her feelings, that she thought someone else in the department should be kicking in the man's front door instead of him and his team. They'd barely survived Hardy's first attack, and now Gage wanted to put himself right in the crazy bastard's sights. "I have to do this, sweetheart," he told her. She tried hard not to cry, but he'd seen the tears. Why? Because there's a good chance Hardy will resist when the DPD shows up on his doorstep. Gay gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. If that happens, a lot of cops will die, unless my pack and I are there. Mackenzie still hadn't liked it, but at least she'd understood. With the 24 hours news outlets already plastering Walter Hardy's face all over the TV and internet, sensationalizing the attempted murders and detailing the supposed connections between him and the dead gunman at the barn, it hadn't been hard finding a judge to sign the search warrants the police needed. So technically, doesn't she have a scoop on this? Shouldn't she be writing about her experience on this? "When will you serve them?" she asked as she sat up from the couch where she'd been napping. Her hair was a wild tumble around her shoulders, and she looked more tired than she had when he'd left to go downtown for the meeting at police headquarters at dawn this morning. Gage doubted she'd got any sleep. "We're going to hit all his major business locations and his residential addresses simultaneously at noon." He glanced at his watch. "In a little less than 3 hours." Mackenzie sat up straighter, alarm clear in her eyes. "That fast? Don't you need more time for planning?" "Normally, we'd want at least a full day to plan out an operation this ambitious, but in this case our biggest concern is that Hardy will get wind of what we're doing and flee the country before we move on him. He likely has people on his payroll planted throughout the police department and the prosecutor's office, so our only hope is to limit the number of people who know the details and hit him faster than he expects." Gage could hear his men getting ready outside, talking in low voices about team assignments and how they would deal with the possibility of serious resistance at multiple locations around the Dallas area at the same time. Mackenzie stood up and crossed the room to hug him. "When do you leave?" she asked, the words muffled against his shoulder. 30 minutes. Gage hated seeing her worry like this. Can we just get on with it? Nobody cares. Nobody cares! "I'm leading the team into Hardy's main residence. The prosecutor thinks that's where we'll likely find the most evidence. What happens if he's already gotten rid of any evidence that could tie him directly to the people who tried to kill us, if there ever was any?" Gage didn't want to think about that. They had this one shot to find something worthwhile on Hardy. If they did, they got a good chance of getting him off the street. If they blew it, Hardy would hit back even harder than he had the last time Gage had come for him, and the son of a bitch had already shown a penchant for aiming at Mackenzie. They're werewolves. Just go after him and rip his throat out. But he didn't voice any of those thoughts. Mackenzie needed to hear that this was all going to work out okay. "That's not going to happen. We will get him one way or the other." Fortunately, Mackenzie was so preoccupied that the anger in his voice escaped her notice. That was good, because there was another topic they'd argued about in the early morning hours, when he'd made the mistake of saying he'd track Hardy down and tear him into several small butterball turkey-sized pieces before he ever let that man get near her again. Mackenzie had come seriously unglued, complete with finger-waving and foot-stamping. Okay. I'm sure I addressed this before, but I can't remember the last time me, a grown-ass woman, got into an argument with someone and stamped my foot. Just saying. "You aren't a murderer. I'm not going to stand by and let you turn into one," she told him angrily. Yeah, he realized as he stood in his office and hugged her tightly. She's still an idealist. Learning about werewolves hadn't changed that. Okay, we're good. Mackenzie chewed on her lip as Gage loaded more equipment into the operations vehicle, then climbed in with Delaney and Lowry. There were way too many different locations to hit and not enough SWAT officers to go around, which meant that one or two would go in the go with regular cops or back up at each target. Gage, Delaney, and Lowry were hitting Hardy's home out in South Lake. Gage had assured her it wasn't any more dangerous than the other locations, but if that were true, he wouldn't have insisted on taking that one himself, and there wouldn't have been two other SWAT guys going to the same location. The anxious feeling that had been growing all day suddenly turned to fear. She jumped up on the running board on the passenger side of the vehicle. Grabbing Gage by the collar, she pulled him close and kissed him, not caring if she embarrassed him in front of Delaney and Lowry. Why would that be embarrassing? You guys are now teenagers. Be careful out there, okay? She whispered. His mouth curved. I will, and you stay inside as much as possible. If you come out, I'll want someone with you. Mac nodded. Cooper, Becker, and Brooks were staying back to supposedly man the compound, but in reality, they'd been pulled out of action so they could be there to protect her. She expected them to be unhappy about being left behind, but they weren't nearly as upset as she thought they'd be. In some bizarre way that only a man could understand, the three werewolves took it as some kind of satisfaction or distinction that their alpha leader had selected them to stay back and watch over his woman. Okay. Cool. She was already comfortable with Becker and Cooper, and Brooks was so damn big that she couldn't help but feel safe around him. Still, as she watched Gage drive off, she couldn't deny she was terrified not for herself but for Gage and all the other guys in the pack. They might be stronger and more capable than ordinary men, but that didn't mean they couldn't get hurt, or worse. Mac and the guys spent the next few hours listening to the drama unfold over the police radio, with frequent updates from the teams. During the initial entry, there had been some resistance, but nothing extreme, yet. Of course, when the press got wind of what was going down, every TV news channel lit up like a Christmas tree, so they were all able to watch the whole thing go down live. Around 7 that night, Gage called to talk to Cooper. Mac worried her bottom lip as she waited for the report. Hardy wasn't at his house or any of the places the team had searched so far, Cooper said when he hung up. Crap. But on the upside, Cooper continued, Gage says they've already found evidence tying Hardy to the gunman he hired. Apparently the man was so obsessed with getting someone who could kill the two of you that he didn't even slow down to hide his tracks. Arrest warrants are on the judge's desk right now. Hearing about the evidence helped, but she'd feel hell of a lot better if they could locate Hardy. Mac tried calling Zach to see if he'd heard anything, but it went to his voicemail. She left a message asking him to call, then hung up. Her cell phone rang before she could even get it back into her pocket. Zach's name popped up on the display. That was fast. Hey, she said. Mackenzie Stone? A woman's voice asked. Mac frowned, not recognizing the voice. Yes? This is Amy Bronson. I'm a nurse at the intensive care unit at Mercy General. We found your name listed in Mr. Gibson's phone under his emergency contact. Oh God, is Zach okay? We've been able to stabilize him, but he was beaten pretty badly. Beaten? Where? By whom? We're not sure. A few terrorists found him in an alley and brought him into the emergency room about 30 minutes ago, the nurse said. Does Mr. Gibson have any family we can call, or would you rather do that? I'm the only family he has, Mac said. Then you might want to get here quickly. Mac clutched the phone to her chest. It's Zach, she told the three werewolves. Someone beat him up. I have to go to the hospital. Why not just say it to the three men? I mean, we already know they're werewolves. We've known from the very first page. She jumped to her feet, but Cooper caught her arm. Hang on. Let me call back and make sure Zach's really there. Which hospital? Crap. Cooper thought it might be a trap. She hadn't even considered that. Mercy General. The nurse said he was in ICU. Mac listened impatiently as Cooper identified himself and gave his badge number to whoever answered the phone. The look on his face told her all she needed to know. He's there and he's in bad shape, Cooper told her when he hung up. Come on, we'll drive you. 15 minutes later, Brooks pulled the SUV up to the emergency entrance. Mac would have jumped out right away, but Cooper stopped her. Wait until Becker gives the all clear. Becker got out and scanned the surrounding area, then nodded. Mac was out of the car and running towards the building when she heard gunshots. A lot of gunshots. She whirled around to see Cooper and Becker falling to the ground, blood staining their uniform shirts. More gunfire echoed as whoever was shooting riddled the SUV with bullets. Mac froze for a moment, then sprinted toward the downed SWAT officers. But she didn't make it more than a few steps before someone grabbed her and dragged her across the parking lot to a four-door sedan that squealed to a stop. When the guy tossed her in the back, she immediately lunged for the opposite door, but a second man jumped in, trapping her. The man who'd first grabbed her shoved her back against the seat as the driver punched the gas. Yeah, boss, we have her, the man in the front passenger seat said, turning to give her a smirk. Roscoe Patterson. Mac would have recognized that smug face of his anywhere, even with the bruises covering it. There was a soft cast on his right wrist, too. She wondered who'd beaten him up. She ran right straight to the hospital, like you said, Patterson continued. We put down the 3 of those fucking SWAT assholes, too. Told you there was no reason to bring outsiders in to deal with this. We'll be at the hangar in 30 minutes. Max swallowed hard. She wasn't sure how badly Cooper and Becker had been hit, but Hardy's legs must have put a couple of hundred rounds into the SUV. How long were they shooting? Well, I guess it would only take a few minutes to put a couple of hundred rounds in something. There was no way Brooks had made it through unscathed. Gage had told her werewolves weren't immortal. Could Hardy's men have killed them? Tears stung her eyes. She didn't even want to think about that. What are you going to do to me? Mac asked. Patterson ignored her as he said something into the handheld radio. Since he kept looking to the side mirror, he must have been talking to someone in the car behind them. She was right. A moment later, another sedan passed them and took the lead. Patterson gave her a nasty smile. Honestly, I don't know what Mr. Hardy has in store for you, but considering that your boyfriend is responsible for the destruction of his entire business empire, killed his son, and then had the balls to walk in and threaten him in his own home, I assume it's going to be something very painful. I really wouldn't want to be you when the boss gets his hands on you. Mac didn't have any clue what the man meant about Gage threatening Hardy in his own home, but if Hardy had gone to the efforts of grabbing her alive, it meant he had something specific in mind for her. If he wanted her dead, his men would have gunned her down like Cooper, Becker, and Brooks. They must have been the ones who'd beat up Zack and used him as bait to draw her out of the compound. She had no idea how Hardy could have known about her relationship with Zack, and that was the one thing that would have pulled her out of hiding, but somehow he did. I don't know, through magic. Lots of magic. Max saw a blurred movement out of the corner of her eye. Up ahead in the darkness, something big slammed into the side of the car in front of them, sending it spinning and out of control. The driver of the car Mac was in swerved, barely avoiding it, then slowed to a stop. Shit, muttered the guy beside her. That was a freaking man who hit them. No way, Patterson said, turning to look over his shoulder at the other car that was now 30 feet behind them. I know what I saw. It was a man. He hit them like he was tackling the damn car. Mac had seen it too, but she wasn't going to clarify that the man they had seen wasn't really a man at all. She didn't know how it was possible Brooks had survived the ambush and chased down two speeding cars to rescue her. She hadn't realized a werewolf could do that. Then again, she didn't really know what a werewolf was capable of. Gunshots echoed in the air. Mac turned to see orange flashes of light in the darkness. Patterson swore. Get us out of here. What about the others? The man driving asked. Screw them if they can't take care of themselves. Over her shoulder, Mac saw a dark shape hurtling toward them. Even though she knew it was Brooks, she still screamed when he slammed into the passenger door hard enough to shatter the glass and dent the door panel. She screamed again when he yanked off the door and dragged out the man beside her. She had enough sense to get out while she could, or would have if the man on the right hadn't grabbed her at the same time the driver floored the gas and sped away. As it did, she caught sight of movement behind them. What the hell was that? The driver asked. Patterson looked around everywhere at once. How the fuck should I know? Let's just get the hell out of here. Mac jerked around trying to get another glimpse of the werewolf chasing them, but it was too dark. It wasn't big enough to be Brooks, so it had to be either Cooper or Becker. She braced herself, expecting whoever it was to slam into the car again, but nothing happened, and the blurred shape fell back. She kept looking around, but 20 minutes later they drove through a small gate somewhere on the backside of the airport and stopped in front of a series of hangars. The man beside her dragged her out of her back seat. Keep an eye out for Mr. Hardy, Patterson ordered the man, grabbing Mac's arm and pulling her towards the metal building. We'll be leaving as soon as he takes care of her. Mac felt Patterson, trying to jerk out of his grasp, but he was no good. Even with a soft cast on his arm, Patterson easily overpowered her and dragged her toward the door that another man was holding open for them. Stay out on the gate and make sure no one has followed us. Before Patterson shoved her through the door, she got a chance to see the man alternating looks between the ripped-up car and the darkness beyond the gate. He didn't seem like he wanted to be out there either. Patterson dragged her across the hangar and around the big, sleek jet in the middle of it until they reached a door on the far side. Without another word, he opened the door and shoved her inside, slamming it behind her. The room was almost completely dark except for an orange glow leaking through the row of small windows near the top of the outer wall. She looked around but couldn't see much more than some shelves and a lot of boxes. Mac ran her hand along the door for the knob, but it was locked. She jerked on it a few times, but it didn't give. She felt her way around the room looking for another way out, but there weren't any other doors, and the only windows were nearly 15 feet off the floor. There was no way she could get up there. She didn't like thinking about what Walter Hardy had in mind for her. He was a vicious man with nothing left to lose. As Patterson had said, Hardy blamed Gage for everything that happened to him, from the death of his son to the cops being on his trail. The powerful man had tried to take his anger out on the commander of the SWAT team and failed. Mac could only assume that he decided to go after an easier target, her. Somehow Hardy knew she and Gage were together. He figured that if he could hurt Gage directly, he'd do the next best thing. He couldn't hurt Gage directly. He'd do the next best thing and hurt someone that was important to him. That thought terrified her so much that it made her tremble. But one thing helped her keep it together. Gage and his pack would come for her, no matter how many of Hardy's men stood in their way. we're going to stop there. I don't even think we're halfway through chapter 12, but the next part is the action stuff, so we kind of want to do that together. Anyway, have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow.